Okay, so again, for those of you that need translation, just select the globe icon at the right-hand side. So good morning, everyone. Buenos dias, Cualitlanesi, all the ways, from all the corners that you all are coming from. Welcome today. My name is Anjali Lafery. I am a co-founder and a comadrita from the Siwapatli Collective. I'm a mom. I'm originally come from Southern California. My father was Afro-Cubano, so we're Taino and Arawak. My mom is from Guatemala, so we're Maya. I always forget to introduce myself when I host. So I'll be moderating today, and I guess you should know like who's speaking to you. So let me do some quick little disclaimers and housekeeping things before I introduce the main folks, right? Sharah and Gabby. Again, we already talked about translation for those that are coming in. If you need translation, just select the interpretation, the globe icon in the bottom right-hand side. We're recording, and thank you for those that are comfortable with that. That just helps us continue to have people watch this if they, aren't able to connect. We also want to give a disclaimer. So since our topic, is medically related, we're talking about things that we can put on our bodies. We just want, to be clear that, folks should consult their own practitioners, their own providers, right? For any medical information, right? This content is not intended to diagnose, to prescribe, to treat, although it might be good for you, but that's not our intention. And then also, if you have any challenges or any issues related to some of the things that are shared, again, that we're not responsible. And so just take care of yourselves, right? Take good care. What's good for you. Consult the people that you trust. We are just sharing information and, educating you all on the things that have impacted the speakers and us as a group in the collective. So, all right. That part is done, right? All the little things that we have to say. So if folks are welcome to please use the chat, if you have questions, if you want to comment, the speakers will also kind of give you instructions on how to connect with us. But let me introduce them and read their bios to you, and then we'll turn it over to them. So I want to introduce Sharah Nieto. I feel really fortunate to know Sharah and to be her comadre as well. Sharah is a Chicana of Yucatec Maya heritage who was born and raised in LA. She has served youth and families through her work at the Boys and Girls Club, the Native American Health Center, the Desert Botanical Garden, has taught in classrooms and museums throughout the Southwest. In her personal life, she's an Aztec dancer who keeps her family grounded through traditional practices. And then Gabby, soon to be, we're gonna call her doctor here, just like, cause soon she's gonna earn that title. So Gabby Miro was born and raised in Puerto Rico. She moved to Arizona with her husband to pursue a doctorate degree in naturopathic medicine, which she just finished. During the program, she became a mother of 2 girls. Her passion towards women's health and the postpartum period grew after she struggled with postpartum depression and anxiety after the birth of her first daughter. This motivated her to get trained as a birth and postpartum doula. She recently moved to Montana, boo for us, in Arizona, where she intends to practice naturopathic medicine focused on women's health. Welcome, 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 Sharah and Gabby, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Anjali, and thank you to the Siwapatli Collective and all of the people that support this work that is so important. Are you guys able to hear me okay? Yes, okay, wonderful. So my name is Sharah Nieto, and I am coming to you from my home. So welcome to my home, which sits on the traditional lands of the Atam, Pipash, and Maricopa people. And I just wanted to thank you all for taking the time to come out with us, join us here for this workshop today. As Anjali mentioned, it's going to be recorded, so please share it with anybody else who you think might benefit from this. And we would love to also hear where you're coming from. So if you have an opportunity, throw in the chat who you are, where you're coming from, and maybe what you hope to get out of today's workshop. Gabi and I will be speaking on sap making and some of the different properties of the plants and the oils that you could utilize with sap making. And then I'll go through a little demo towards the end as well. So we're super excited to be here today. A little bit more about me. Anjali mentioned that I'm a mom, an Aztec dancer, an educator, also work for the Botanical Garden, and I was also a runner on the Peace and Dignity Journey. So you guys should be able to see that slide up there right now with me, with my little one.
Oh, hang on, let me share the slide. Give me one quick second.
No problem. I can keep talking while you're figuring that out.
Okay.
So the reason that I mention all of these things is because they all help me to get to where I'm at right now and kind of doing the work that I've been doing with Aztec dancing. We work with a lot of the medicines and ceremony. You learn a lot, right? And you build a relationship with these plants. And with the Peace and Dignity journeys, that was the first time we were gifted a lot of pomadas and a lot of salves on that run, because as you can imagine, your muscles and legs get really tired. And because we were running through all of these indigenous territories from the tip of Alaska to Guatemala, you know, we had an opportunity to see the different ways that people heal and the different ways that people utilize the landscape and plants to be able to take care of their bodies. So we were fortunate that people shared these things with us, and we had so many wonderful pomadas throughout the way that we would all, they were highly coveted, let's just say that. And they show up later in my life, which I'll tell you more about in just a minute. But let's go ahead and hear from Gabi. Gabi, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Oh, yes. Can you hear me? Okay, so I'm Gabi, short for Gabriela. As they shared, I am from Puerto Rico, born and raised, and we moved to Arizona for me to pursue my doctorate in naturopathic medicine. During the program, I have to say it was very tough because I was super homesick, and I felt like I was in an emotional desert. So I felt at home when I had my first daughter, Violeta, and that was during med school, and it was really hard. But her name is Violeta, like violet, the plant, and then I had Magnolia, and I was also still in the program, and it was really tough because I was disconnected from my land, from my family, my roots, my language, my foods. And I would say that even though my first postpartum experience was hard, it pushed me to reach out to the community, to learn. And through that bad postpartum experience, I was able to prepare better for my second time around. And I say I had this revelation. I was praying, and one night, their names are, you know, flower names, Violeta and Magnolia. And I felt that God said that they were my flowers in the desert. So it took me, you know, go to a desert away from, you know, my culture and everything to really grow, because I had, you know, the chance to do so in a foreign land. And you know, I had the opportunity to bloom in the desert just through motherhood. And I think that every little thing you learn, like in this this workshop, will help you connect with other people. And yes, so we'll share a little bit more about our postpartum experiences and what things were helpful.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Gabi. And you know, I think that when Anjali first mentioned the anxiety that you experienced with your first birth, I was like, yeah, yes, definitely, right? For me, nobody prepared me for that. And I think it's really important to be able to have conversations about that, and to have conversations about, like, how do we manage that anxiety? How do we go through that and come out the other end healthy and well, right? So I think you and I are both on the other end of things. And I hope that these talks also also don't scare people, because I know that was one of the things too. When I was pregnant, I was terrified with my first daughter. I didn't have her till later in life, and I was terrified my whole life to get pregnant. So I was, just a hot mess. But yeah, anyways, a little bit more about Gabi and I and how we kind of came together in this work. So my partner also went to the Southwest College of Naturopathic Medicine and graduated with Gabi. So, as a woman in medicine and also somebody who is interested in this work, I asked her if she would be willing to do this workshop with me because she has the medical side of that knowledge that she brings to the table, right? So super excited that she was willing to join us and is able to share her expertise here with everyone in this circle. So this video that we're going to share with you next is something that I created for my daughter. When I went back to work 3 months after I gave birth to my daughter, I had to go back to work because that's just what I had to do at that time. And it was really difficult. If there are any mothers on the line, you will know that is, for most people, a really difficult transition to go back into work, to leave your child somewhere with someone. And in my case, much like Gabi's, I was out in San Francisco, didn't have family there, but have developed a really good network of friends. I've been there for 20 years. And even so, it was still nerve-wracking to leave my home and my daughter and to have that separation. But I share this experience with you because I think because it was created in that very vulnerable time period of my life, I feel like it really expresses where I was at, and that then leads me to the pomada making. So let's go ahead and play that.
Okay, and we are going to pause the recording for this portion, just so y'all know, so give me a second to do that.
Because it is a deep personal. I created it for my daughter while I was working at the Native American Health Center in a workshop. And the reason I share that with you is because it shows like that vulnerability that we go through during that time period, and in other important times in our lives too, we might experience those same things. But that experience taught me a lot of things, and it was just the tip of the iceberg, right? Because being a mother brings up so many things for you. That was just one of the many things that I would have to go through, and I continue to go through and be able to process and grow through those experiences. But I also share it because one of the things that helped me when I was in that place is one of my former roommates was a masseuse, and she offered an opportunity to come to the house and give me a massage, which I highly recommend after you give birth, because I felt like a truck had hit me. And so she came and she gave me a massage in the comfort of my own home. It was such a privilege, right, to have a friend to be able to offer this. I don't even know if she charged me for that. I might have given her a tip or something. I don't remember because it's postpartum. You don't remember anything, right? But while I was on the run, I told you they gifted us all of these salves, and one of the salves that I kept with me when I left the run was this pomada that was made out of peyote. And peyote has many medicinal properties and is used in ceremonial ways, but I had never really seen it utilized in a salve. After like giving birth and getting the massage, is amazing as it is, but utilizing the salve in that massage, I just felt like a weight was lifted off of me. So since that moment, I've always wanted to recreate that salve, and that is kind of what led me here. I started like with other plants that I'm more familiar with, like sage and creosote, that is all over where we live here in Phoenix, Arizona. And so I haven't worked my way up to the peyote salve yet, but I think it's like coming. It's like one of those things, right? Like that you're birthing and that you're preparing for. So I feel like I'm very close. Maybe today is the day. So Gabi, if you want to share a little bit more about your postpartum story, then we can go into the salves and the different properties.
Absolutely. So this time around, when I was about to have Magnolia, I made sure I prepared for my postpartum. So instead of having the usual baby shower, I celebrated a mommy shower. And it was just focused on, I didn't ask for gifts for the baby. This time around, I asked for help, home cooked meals, a massage, and like cleaning services and things like that. And I also prepare stations of like teas and different things to help my body throughout, the postpartum period, which is the first, after birth, those first 40 days. And I think it just making that shifted all of my mentality of what postpartum really was. So instead of dreading the process, I embraced it, and it was amazing. Like, I enjoyed it so much. And I think it was because of the preparation. And I know that we're going to talk about how to prepare a salve, and there are tons of salves, in the market. But there is something about preparing your own medicine and the intention that you put into it that just makes it so special and close to you. So I think it's, tremendous that you prepare, make your, based on your inspiration, take what you like and just personalize it to whatever you want to. And yes, that's why I love medicine making. So beginning with, what is a salve? It's a soothing ointment prepared from beeswax combined with an oil, usually a medicinal oil, which Sharah will explain a little bit later on. And it's using an herb, a plant part, and infusing it in an oil to make a medicinal preparation. Salves are used topically, so they are not meant to be ingested or, apply on broken skin or like something that looks infectious. That's why Anjali made that medical claim in the beginning. So salve, it's a semi-solid preparation of an ointment. It depends on the amount of beeswax that the salve has. And in order to know like how long will this salve be good for. So if you add a preservative, it can be good up to 1 year. And 3 to 6 months if you don't add any sort of preservatives. And the usual preservative that you can use, and it's, cost effective, it's vitamin E. And you can add roughly 1 ml of vitamin E for every 30 mLs. 30 mLs is usually 1 ounce bottle. And 1 ml would be 1 dropper full of that. And another recommendation would be to fill the bottles as full of oil as possible to minimize the contact with air during the storage. That will help the oil or the salve last longer. Desired plant actions. When naturopaths or herbalists talk about plant actions or botanical actions, these are properties that are characteristic to each plant. And why do we need to select our actions first? Because those will target the whatever you want to cover. If you want to prepare a tea, you need to first address the actions. What do you want to use that tea for? Is it soothing something, or is it preventing or decreasing the rate of infection? So this time around, we're going to make a salve. So what plant actions do we want for that salve? So we want to make it a vulnerary. A vulnerary action is a substance that soothes and heals the wound. Some plants that are commonly used and safe during the postpartum period are comfrey, plantago, and calendula, which is very popular. And another action would be an antimicrobial, which is self-explanatory. It's an herb or a preparation that helps the body fight off microbial infections. It can be prevention or fighting off. And lavender and chamomile are very good for that, and also very commonly used in the postpartum period. And another action is anti-inflammatory, and plantago, it says plantago, but it's plantago and chamomile are a great addition to that. There are also other options or plant actions, depending on what you want to do. Other actions are styptic herbs, and those are herbs that help decrease bleeding. And there's another action called demulcent, and those are typically plants that have like a mucilage substance like slippery elm or marshmallow, which help soothe the inflammation process and cools down the skin. So those are other options.
Gabby, just let me know when you want me to go to the next slide.
Okay, you can go to the next slide.
Okay, thanks.
And then oils. These are some common oils, but there are many other. And we want to focus on kitchen medicine. So whatever you have available, that's gonna be the best option. You don't have to try to find the most expensive. Whatever you have works. So most households have olive oil or avocado oil. Coconut oil is very popular. So these are things that you will find in the kitchen. Olive oil is the go-to oil for herbalists or like salve makers because it's economic. It's a good carrier oil, and it also contains flavonoids, and it's great for all skin types. Grapeseed oil is useful for skin types that do not absorb oils well, and it doesn't have this greasy feeling. It will absorb well, and it has a pleasant odor. Almond oil also smells nice, and it's a neutral flavor. It's emollient, which means that it's moisturizing, and it's good for all skin types. It's also a good carrier oil for essential oils. Remember that essential oils are not meant to be applied topically, for the exception of lavender. Other oils or tea tree oil, other oils, and I would recommend those you would put in a carrier oil because you never know what skin will react. Calendula, it's an amazing herb. It's pretty safe, but if you can develop an allergy or have allergies to the Asteraceae family. So whenever you make these, you have to try it out. And even though it can be super safe, you don't know. People react to so many weird things. And so it's a good practice to just like try it out on a little patch of skin. Avocado oil contains saturated fats. It's also moisturizing. It nourishes and restores dry and dehydrated skin and improves elasticity. Coconut oil, that's one of my favorites. It's also moisturizing, it absorbs well, it doesn't clog pores, and it's good for dry, itchy, or sensitive skin, like people that are prone to eczema, also babies. That's a great oil to use. And the next slide, please. So postpartum plants for salves and their properties. Calendula, like I mentioned, is really popular. It can decrease infection. It can also decrease inflammation and speed wound healing. It's used topically to treat wounds, insect bites, skin inflammation like eczema or psoriasis. It's good for burns, boils, ulcers, hemorrhoids, sore, or cracked nipples. Lavender, it's antiseptic. It's useful for topical for small cuts, abrasions, or insect stings and burns. Chamomile, it's antimicrobial. This is one of my favorite herbs. It's anti-inflammatory and speeds up the healing process. It's super safe for pets, kids, moms. It has so many actions. It's a great herb. And then marshmallow, like I mentioned, it's a demulcent herb, so it will be cooling and moistening. And it's being historically used for abscesses, boils, ulcers, wounds, and they used to use it for gangrene. So these are the most popular go-to herbs during the postpartum period because they are very safe, they are very gentle, and most of these will be used topically.
Question, Gabby and Sharah. How do you want people to ask questions, and when do you want them to come in and ask questions? Maybe y'all can
That
give
is a
that.
great question, Anjali. I feel like this is such a good segue to be able to ask questions. There's so much that I learned just in the little bit that Gabby shared, like how much vitamin E oil to add, because I just kind of do salves the way I cook. I put a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and see see if it's good, you know. So I see an oil here that's almost coming up to a year old. So I probably use that one today in this workshop. But yeah, if people have questions, they can pop them in the chat. I know we have somebody here who is from South Sacramento, who's doing postpartum work. So, and then also please, anybody who's on the call, who has their own knowledge that they want to add to the conversation, please feel free to share what you know also. But yeah, if anybody has a question about any of the information that Gabi just shared, right now is a wonderful time, I think, to be able to do that. Do you have anything for her, Anjali?
Questions, let's see. Actually, yes, this might just be my ignorance, but I'm not familiar with marshmallow. I mean, I'm familiar with marshmallow, the food. I don't think that's what you mean, Gabby. So like, where do we consider, where do people get marshmallow, and yeah, what is it?
Okay. So marshmallow, it's an herb, and it's called Althea officinalis. It's not the sweet treat that we find at, a regular grocery store. It's a demulcent herb, and it's usually, people can use it internally, and that's the common name, marshmallow root. You can find it on an herb shop. And yes, you can make preparations based on that. Another hint, when I say demulcent, which are like soothing, it is a soothing property and cooling. It's not like putting a plant together and just doing whatever you want. You have to know the plant in order to just extract the best out of it. So demulcent herbs are best extracted in in a cooling method. So instead of using heat to extract, you have the herb and you put it in cold water and you let it sit for 24 hours. And that's where the mucilage of the plant can come out easily. If you were to put marshmallow in heat, it might not extract that property that you want. So there's an art of extracting, each component for plants. Another nice thing that I learned in school that I really didn't know was that when a flower it's blooming, like let's say calendula, all of the energy of that plant, all of the nutrients will go to the flower bud, because that's where all of the energy is shifting. So all of the properties, and everything will be at its peak when it's flowering, that plant, because we use the flower part to make medicine. So that's when you use it. And let's say another plant like a rhizome, which it's ginger. If the ginger was to be like blooming, all of the efforts and energy of the plant, it's going to the flower, but what we medically use is the root. So you want to wait when the plant, it's putting all of its efforts, or it's dormant, and all of the energy is going to the root. So you will extract the root when the plant it's not blooming or flowering. So that's basically the concept of like knowing the plant, when it blooms, and what's the perfect time to collect and harvest in order to get the most quality and most energetic properties of that plant.
It just reminds me of, like making a relationship, making a relationship with the things that we use and the thing with our medicines, so thank you for that. I do want to encourage, if there's any other questions, we don't have to, belabor, but if there's any other questions that you all are welcome to use the chat. Where are we going now, Gabby and Sharah?
So next I'll walk you into the sap making process. And if there's any other questions as we do that, please feel free to chime in. I like that Gabi mentioned this as well. I think that's really important. Start where you're at, right? And that building that relationship with the plant, I think is the most important piece, right? So for me personally, coming from California, especially in San Francisco, there was a lot of my friends were growing sage, California white sage. I've had an opportunity when visiting Kumia Island with some friends out there to pick and harvest some California white sage from their land, right? Now, that's what I started with because that's what was most familiar to me and what was accessible to me. And then it's also, I know it's something that's over harvested as well, right? That there's issues around that. So it's not something that like I'll purchase from Whole Foods in a package, or even I know there's people that sell all of these wands online and whatnot. I won't purchase unless they let me know who their distributor is, so then I can then see where their distributor is getting their plants from and what their practice is like. That's what sage specifically, I have that like sort of relationship with sage, and that, you know, those are my sort of principles around utilizing sage, right? But with this particular like I started there, and I learned that recipe actually from the Chia Cafe Collective, which has this really wonderful book that has a lot of different types of recipes that utilize the native land, the land and the native plants that are in California. And one of the things that's in there is the salve that I started with. Craig Torres, who's Tongva and Gabrieleño, shares a really beautiful recipe in here. You could get this book through Tia Chuchas online. Sorry, that's my dog. He just learned how to hit the bell to let him out. So I apologize for that. I had a feeling that might happen.
Good job, dog.
Yes, yes.
And when you're ready, there's a question. So let me know when you're ready.
Yeah, let's go ahead. Let's throw in that question.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm a dog mom, so I'm always excited when the dogs do what we want them to do. Okay, so is there a specific pomada and herbs that you recommend for sore muscles and body aches? That question is from Jacqueline.
Gabi, you want to go ahead and take that?
Sure. So I guess there's so many things, and I guess it depends on what works for you and what resonates. For example, you know, people use cayenne to, like, they put it in salves, and you know, cayenne, it's very spicy, and the way it works, it works for pain or for muscle aches, and it depletes the substance P, and the substance P, it's what signals like that pain to go off, and cayenne depletes that that signal over a couple of days. So cayenne, it's a great addition for arthritis or muscle aches, but it might burn for the first couple of days, where you say like, oh, it's not really helping my pain because I've been using it for 3 days and it's still achy. And the trick with natural salves and herbs is that it takes time. It won't act as something you buy in a pharmacy, but it's good because you can make it on, you know, on your own, and you know it'll work. You have to trust the healing process, trust the herb. So that's something you can add to a salve that's, you know, for like muscle pain relief. Also, I know that some people love to use arnica. I haven't used arnica in a salve. I've seen it as like a gel or creams, and it's very popular, common, you know, from what's this brand, Boren, and they make their own like arnicare. That's something else people use. And yes, I would have to do more like research and gather like, oh yes, this herb, because there are so many herbs that you can use, so many. But
That's
absolutely.
Gabi, that's a good point too, into doing our own research, right? And learning about the different plants. I think there was a second part to that question I saw pop up, Anjali, if you can share that with us.
Yep, absolutely. And is there, or let's see, so that are compatible postpartum and during pregnancy. So are there specific pomadas and herbs that are recommended for sore muscles and body aches that are compatible postpartum and during pregnancy? And I was thinking too, when you're recommending the cayenne, Gabby, like I've been thinking about open skin. I wonder if people are also thinking about if you're breastfeeding, you know, all those kinds of things.
Yes. So the thing with herbs, not many people will say yes if, you know, you can use this or that, because there's an ethics problems in terms of trying out plants and herbs, or, you know, trials with pregnant people. So these would be more like word of mouth. Like, what do you recommend? Right now, we can't make any medical recommendation. But I would say go with your intuition and just like share that, search for herbs that are safe in the postpartum or pregnancy. And I wouldn't encourage anybody to take anything internally. And all of the salves, or salve making are basically for topical use. And like I said, like I love botanical medicine, but I don't know all the repertoire, all the botanical materia medica by heart. But I would focus first on searching for the actions that you want. Do you want something that's anti-inflammatory? And don't forget about doing stretching and exercises, because sometimes a pomada salve can work tremendously if you incorporate other modalities as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Gabby, for sharing that. As you shared this, it reminded me of another pomada that I use in postpartum. Nobody tells you that if you're going to nurse your child and breastfeed, that you're going to get cracked nipples and it's gonna, be painful and scaly for some time. So one of the things that I did is I had a Whole Foods right down the street from my house, and they sold a little pomada called Good Goop, and it had a whole bunch of medicinal herbs, but one of the ones that I remember and that I could recognize on there was the calendula, right? So that was one of the oils that I began making as well, because speaking of where do you source your materials? So when I can, I harvest my own material, or I'll even trade, right? So I had an opportunity to harvest a lot of creosote this year working at the Desert Botanical Garden with the monsoons that came. They lost a lot of plants. So they had this big giant creosote bush, and I was like, what are you doing with that? Can I harvest it, right? So that worked out in my favor. And then I was able to trade some of that with my friend who grows the white sage in California. So there was that intercambio. But calendula is one of those things that I've been interested in and haven't yet grown, but would like to grow. So between now and the time that I get to the calendula, I basically purchased it, right? This is a bag that I purchased from the San Francisco Herb Company. And it comes like this. They sell it online as well. And so for me, that was the herb shop that was familiar to me. So I would purchase lavender from them, which comes from France. And I've heard that it's not treated with as many pesticides in France as lavender is here. But now my mom has a lavender plant that I gifted her 1 year and broke out of its pot, and is now a huge bush that's taking over her house. So now I harvest my own lavender from her house. So I started out with a bag, right? And purchasing that from my local herb shop. But then I moved on to like trying to grow the plant unintentionally with the lavender, but very intentionally with the calendula, and a little bit of harvesting here and there as well. So, yeah.
Sorry if I can interrupt. I just want to bring in a comment as well that Christy is sharing drinking water as well. And I think that was in response to when Gabby was saying, make sure that you move around and you use movement and exercise to expedite the use of the salve, So I think that that's where that comment came in.
And to give you like a fair answer as well, if it was me, I would go for lavender, because it's great for muscles. It's a great herb in like aromatherapy speaking. Like you rub that if people have like a migraine or a headache, you can rub lavender oil on your temples, and it's good for muscles too. So there's like the massage component, you're applying it and you're just like rubbing and stretching out your muscles. So you have the massage and the aromatherapy factor, and it's really great for for your senses. So if it was me, I would do lavender for those massages.
It's very gentle too, right? And that's the thing also, my partner asked me why do you keep doing this? Or people ask me why don't you sell this? I'm like, that's a good question. One, I don't sell it because then it'll become work. It's a business, and it's going to change my relationship with the medicinas for me personally. I know people sell this stuff all the time. And I also started making it because I didn't want to purchase a $20 salve. I wanted to be able, I'm that person that I see something at the store, I'm like, that's too expensive, I can make it. Which is good. It kind of works in my favor, right? But the other reason, when I was asked that question, like, why do you make it? I was like, yeah, why do I make it? Something I've been interested in, but something that I also realized after the fact that I didn't know was going to be, I just didn't think about, like, oh yeah, this could happen, right? Is that whenever I worked with lavender and any of these medicines, really, it puts you in this different space, and it's just so calming and soothing, and my frame of mind just kind of shifts. I get into like this very like reflective, meditative place. I'm thinking about, those intentions that you mentioned, Gabi, like who I'm creating this for, why I'm creating it. I even think about like all of like the ceremonial stories and songs. I saw a really beautiful comment. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, so that's part of the process too, right? Like a lot of times when I started doing things like this, it was with the Aztec dance group that I'm a part of. And when we do these things, we come together in a group to work with these medicinas. They're in San Francisco now, so I'm here by myself, but those teachings I still brought with me and carried with me here. And so for me, it makes me feel connected to that and those teachings. And I have a new community here that I get to share that with as well. But especially through this pandemic, I was furloughed pretty like shortly after the pandemic started. And so I was like, well, what do I do with myself now, right? And this is one of the things I had always wanted to do. I knew I had the recipe, and I was like, well, let me just give it a shot. Since I have the time now, I can't say I don't have time to do that. And I have all of these herbs that like I've collected through the years. Like I can't hoard them, so I can do something with them, right? And I can make things, I can utilize it, and then I can share it with my community as well. So I hope that you guys all do that as well. Are there any questions before we move into the salve making, Anjali?
There was just a comment. So Jacqueline, again, I think it's Jackie. I'm just saying, hey, if it is Jackie, and the Jackie that I know, she said exactly. And making things accessible to people who are economically overwhelmed after having a baby too.
Yes, you're on a budget, right? Like, so you can't I can't afford that little tiny pomada that was like, I don't know, $15 or something. It was expensive. I remember that. But I remember it really worked. My achy nipples and just kind of helped me heal in that place. And I felt safe using it too for my baby who was nursing, right? I looked at those ingredients and I was like, I think this is something that's going to be okay for her. It was in the mama section too, so that made me feel a little bit better. But yeah, I was really careful about what I put on my body, because I knew my daughter had that close proximity to me, and what she put in her body as well. So I try to be very mindful even in the salve making, like what types of products I use and where I harvest from. So I try not to harvest plants that are like near roads that get a lot of exhaust, right? The oils that I use, I try to use organic whenever possible. I've used a lot of the oils that Gabi mentioned, with the exception of avocado oil, because avocado oil for me personally, it's really expensive. So I started with the olive oil, and also did the grapeseed oil. I haven't done the coconut oil yet. So really it's just about like having this base and then going from there, right? Or maybe you already have your base and you're going to add some of this new knowledge that you've learned into your practice, right? So here is the recipe that is basically adapted from what I learned from Craig Torres. And you can, mess with the quantities of like the beeswax, for instance. You can mess with the different oils that you use. I guess mess wouldn't be the best word, but you can experiment, right, with the different oils and the different herbs. And of course, like Gabi was saying, depending on what herb it is that you're working with, they have different properties and different ways to best extract the medicine from those herbs. So
before you begin, I don't want to forget, before you start making any And in medicine, if you were going to use dry herbs, I would recommend putting those herbs in a container and put some alcohol on it and let it sit for 24 hours or so covered. So because the herbs will be dry and you would be moistening the herbs, and the alcohol will help extract all of the benefits. So you're kind of like they'll be damp for the next day. That's like a little tip I learned that will make the most out of your herbs. So you can use them as is. If you want, you can prepare the herbs the night before you make your salve or whatever it is that you want to make. So, yeah.
Gabby, thank you so much for adding that. That was not in the recipe that I read, so it's not what I've done, but I really like that tip and I will do it for the next one. So you're saying that whatever, like, let's say if I was gonna work with this batch of creosote that I have right here, I would like spray it with some alcohol?
No, so you would add, depending of the amount. So if you have like a cup of dry creosote, you can put like half a cup of alcohol or Everclear, basically. You know that Everclear, it's 90 proof, I believe. So you put that and you just soak the herbs. You don't want to cover it with alcohol. You just want to damp, all of the herbs. And then you cover that with a cloth or a lid, whatever you have. And then by the next day, they should be kind of like replumped or, a little bit damp and not completely wet. It makes the herb ready for whatever you want to make.
Oh, that makes sense. And then, so that would be then okay, even if the plant it's almost like a rehydration process of the plant, right?
Exactly.
So, and that would be okay combined with the oil.
Yes, because at that point the alcohol should, evaporate basically.
Awesome.
And it won't mess with the oil.
And this is why we invited Gabi Miro, ladies and gentlemen, or ladies. Gracias por esa recomendación. Thank you for that recommendation. So if we can, Anjali, while I'm preparing this, take the PowerPoint off so that people can have see the full screen of the space. So what I do, basically, what I will be doing from here on out is I will be soaking my plantitas in the alcohol the night before, but I haven't done that because that's a new teaching that has come to me today through this workshop. But what I do usually too, for me personally, like I'll burn some sage or some cedar, just turn on my salmador. So that's on right now. If it's smoking here, that's why. And really just kind of set my intentions when I begin to work with these plants. The other thing that's been really fun too is that as I begin to work with this, my daughter has an interest in it also. And she's like, can I help? And at first I was like, no, let me be, I'm trying to figure this out, but as I became more comfortable doing this, I was like, yeah, of course, help me, grind this, then do this, then do that. So it's beautiful because then she's learning this and that's being passed on, right? And that's something that, like Gabi mentioned, like that disconnect, right? When you move away from your family, when you move away from your home place, you're disconnected from the plants and people, the land, all of these things that are part of our teachings, right? But I think we're doing the best we can to stay connected to that, to reconnect to those, and then to pass it on to our children as well, which is another important piece to postpartum, right? And all that we share with our little ones. So you want to basically make sure your herb is dry, right? So what I usually do, if I'm not purchasing something from like an herb shop, I've harvested it, I put it out to dry. I have a lot of these baskets that I purchased from the South Phoenix Central Street Market. They're tarahumara baskets. So I set them out to dry in the sun. And this has been like this for some time now. And then I grind them either, if I'm working a big batch, I'll put it in a mortar or my metate. But I actually like this little one that I got some time ago. The other thing is I tend to keep like when I first started, I would use whatever I was cooking with to do my herbs. But as I began to do more herbs, I'm like, that's probably not a good idea. I don't want my things smelling like salsa or tasting like salsa, So I keep it separate. I keep, the funnel separate, whatever sort of mortars I'm using separate, everything separate. Even like my cutting board is separate now, just, to like, I'm sure there's some like medical stuff behind that and like cross-contamination stuff that you don't want to do with your herbs, but I just keep it all separate. So I think that's a good learning that has come along the way. So I have a whole bunch of like what we call in Maya sheesh here at the bottom. So I'm just gonna grab that sheesh and put it in here. And I basically want to chop it or mash it all, break it up, basically break up the different herbs. And for this particular recipe, you want 3 cups of herb, and it could be like, when I first did it, it was like 1.5 cups of sage and then 1.5 cups of creosote. So it's really up to you and what you're looking to get out of the plants, and what's accessible to you also, right? What is readily available to you. So it takes a while. This is a process. And this is for me, like the meditative part, right? The part where my daughter also comes in and is like, I want to do that. And she'll do it for like 5 minutes and she's like, I'm done, right? Because you have to do 3 cups. So it kind of takes a while. Let's see how much we have here. Almost a cup, so a little bit more. Do we have any questions?
Not so far in the chat, but let's see. And thank you all. I'll step in and say thank you to the folks who kind of have asked for the transcription to be turned on, so please feel free, like if there's something that you need that we're not paying attention to, that I'm not paying attention to, like feel free to ask us. I know that everyone's really polite in our workshops. They go on, mute their screen and all that good stuff, but just want you to know that you can ask for whatever you need. So, I have actually a quick question.
Yeah.
So when we were talking about the alcohol, we're talking about like Everclear, like drinking alcohol, correct? Right?
Yes.
So, okay.
And you can find that like at Bevmo. I've seen it there. It's kind of expensive. I was surprised.
Yeah. Food City.
It's strong stuff.
Food City. Oh, good to know. I might have to go there then. So
I just wanted to let them know that the reason behind the grinding or soaking the herbs in alcohol is just to extract better. When you're grinding, you're increasing the surface area of the material, and it will make the goodness more available to whatever method you use to extract, if it's in oil, water, so that it's called I forgot the word. I think it's I forgot. Never mind. But it's just making things really, really small. And that is why you want to do that with the herbs.
So let me show you here. This is my rough chop of it. I'm really glad that you mentioned that as well, because it's something I was thinking about but hadn't said yet. And also I put everything in there. It's like the little twigs and the little leaves of the creosote plant. And I'm kind of rough in my like measuring. It's 3 cups. So like any good Martha Stewart following fan, I have 2 cups already prepped, and you have the 3rd one here that I'm putting into a quart-sized jar. The other thing I do, because you do get some spillage here and there, is I'm working with a trapo that I put underneath everything, so then I can make sure that I get all of it, right? Otherwise it just kind of ends up everywhere. Once you get your 3 cups in there, then you will grab your whatever oil it is that you're using. For me today, it's olive oil. And you're gonna fill it about an inch from the top. And this just feels so good too on your skin when you do your salves. I use them all the time, almost on a daily basis. Gabi, I gave you some too, huh?
Yes. Oh yeah, and some agua florida too.
That's next. That's the next workshop. That's what I was thinking about when you were talking about the different extraction processes. I'm like, that's the next workshop, right? If you were in my kitchen, gosh, it smells so good in here, because as you crush up the herbs, it kind of also like releases that aroma of the herbs. So about an inch from the top, right? So here you go. That's about an inch from the top. And then what I'm gonna do is put the lid on it. Now this part is different people do it different ways. I know like some people do the oil infusion like in a crock pot. I haven't personally done that yet. And so the way I learned is that you put it in a brown paper bag and then put it outside for about a week and in the sun. And then every few days you kind of like shake it up. But I know that people also put it in the closet in a dark space for about a month and also kind of agitate it a few days, right? So that is the oil infusion process. Is there anything else you want to add to that, Gabi, or any questions that people have about the oil infusion process?
Yeah. So the double boiler method, it's used when, let's say you have this rash or something that you need to use that sap pronto, then you will want to do that double boiler or use the slow cooker or the instant pot, whatever you use. But if you want to do the more traditional approach, then doing the 4 to 6 weeks, it depends on however long you want to leave that herb, soaking in that oil.
It's a really good point. Is there any other questions that we have before we move on to the salve making now that we have done the oil infusion?
I'm going to change the view here. Nothing's in the chat, so again, and encourage you all, if you want to come off of mute to ask your question, you're welcome to as well.
Okay. So the other thing, go ahead.
I think
I didn't have enough time to check this. I was wondering with the alcohol, so putting alcohol on the dry herb and then setting it in the oil, well, that's not going to cause it to mold.
Yvonne, I don't know if it's just me, you're having a tiny little bit of trouble hearing you. It almost sounds like you're a little far away from the microphone. Is it possible to restate?
Yes. Is it better now? No. Do you want me to type it in the chat?
I think I heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, Yvonne, that will it cause it to mold if you put it in the alcohol? Is that right?
Yes. After you put in the alcohol and then you set before, because I was just wondering because I've heard that if you put oil, that water can cause it to go rancid.
So on the contrary, you can do that in order to prevent contamination. And like I said, you will not it won't be like a herb smoothie. You just want to put enough alcohol to damp and just to replump the material. So there shouldn't be any like little puddle or like alcohol visible to the eye. And it's supposed to be, like I said, roughly like 24 hours where you put that lid. And the purpose is to re-moisten and just like make those nutrients, more available. I just posted something, a link to like Mountain Rose Herbs. They also have like tons of recipes, and it explains a little bit what I was trying to explain regarding the alcohol use.
There's also desert sage herbs. If you're in the Phoenix area, that's where you can get some of these herbs. And oftentimes they have them organic as well. I don't know if they have recipes on their website, but the store is pretty neat. Just be prepared to spend a lot of money, because if you're anything like me, I was just like, and I want this and I want that. I haven't seen this. Oh my God, you guys have that. It was neat. Does Krista have a question? I saw her hand raised, but then it came down, or their hand raised.
Yeah, so I have a question about the lid. Does it matter if it's a plastic lid or a metal lid? I think in the past I've heard people say if you use a metal lid to put like what, wax paper or parchment paper in between. I don't know if that, I'm still new to it. That's why I'm asking the question.
So I've never heard of that, I must say. I guess like the purpose is just to making sure that the herb is damp, basically. I don't think that it really matters. Some people just use like a piece of cloth and they just put it on top of it. Some people use like a super airtight container. I don't think I would personally use like a tight lid, because I would like that alcohol to evaporate eventually.
That's a good point. It's a really good point. So let's if we don't have any other questions, if we can move on to the salve portion. Yeah. Okay. So the other thing I did not mention is that I usually put a little label on things, like what it is, when I made it, sometimes even like the location. If I didn't make it in my home, like I did a workshop in Oakland a few weeks ago, and you know, just so you remember, because the oils all kind of look the same once they're done, and then you would have to like open it to smell it, and then you could probably guess the plant that you used if it was one, but if it was more than one, then you might not remember. You might not remember the oil you use. And then that's important too, because if you're gifting it, you want to be able to tell people what is inside it in case they have any sort of known allergies, right? So this is lavender that I infused in olive oil some months ago. And you know, for this one, I just used like a little jar that I had at home. I made a small batch. And I use this. Some people use cheesecloth. You kind of figure out what works for you, right? Because for me, the cheesecloth, it was like, oh, everything was everywhere, and trying to keep it all contained. I was like, this is a hot mess. So I found that this is the easiest thing for me is I dump everything in this little bag, little nifty thing that I picked up from Sprouts, I think. And then you can see that I have my funnel here that's supporting that little bag, right? And then I have my funnel on top of my little glass jar container that I'm putting my oil into. And I always use the same jars, because eventually when I finish utilizing this oil, then, you know, I clean out this jar and we'll use it to put another oil in. So I basically let that kind of strain, and then once it's kind of emptied out, then I'll go in there with my hands and squeeze it all out. And then I get a whole bunch of oil on my hands that I just kind of rub all over myself. That smells so good because of the lavender. So my oil is then ready to be able to be turned into salve, which is super exciting. This is like the moment we've all been waiting for, right? And what I do is, at home, you can see here on my kitchen stove that I have some water boiling, and I'm just gonna put it in like a slow sort of simmer so it's not completely boiling over. And I don't know what you call this well, it's a double broiler in English. We call it a baño de Ave Maria.
Baño Maria, yeah.
Baño Maria, right? That's how I know it as. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pour in here half a cup of this oil.
Also, can I interrupt you very quickly?
Yes.
I think the container that you use is very important. So the best way to store herbs are in glass jars, not like baggies or plastic. It's just like, it's better and it will last longer. Herbs can last for a very long time. dry herbs can last for years in the proper container. Yeah, so that's all I wanted to say.
That's a really good point. So this calendula bag that I showed you earlier, the rest of the calendula is in the jar. But I didn't have a big enough jar for that one. But you can see here I have my lavender, it's in the jar, and I just repurpose the jars that, have the peaches or whatever you get from Costco or stores. But I make sure to do a good job kind of cleaning them out. Then also boiling them. Sometimes if they have a really strong smell that can stain the glass, like putting what's that called? Vinegar. Vinegar usually tends to take the smell out of that. So just making sure that your jar is really clean. So here's my baño. And then I'm gonna set my other little like measuring cup that's has half a cup of the oil in there. I'm gonna set that into the baño, the bath, the warm water, to be able to warm but not cook. You don't want to cook the oil, because then you cook all of the like good properties out of your oil. And then you're gonna add your wax. So these are little organic beeswax pellets that I ordered online, and they're kind of expensive. But it goes a long way. I've had this bag and I've made so many different batches of this oil that it's just lasted a long time. So you're gonna get this, and then you're gonna get your tablespoon. You're gonna get a tablespoon of this wax. This is my process. I'm sure everyone has their own process, but here's what it looks like. You can see there the little wax pellets. And if you live in Phoenix, don't store it outside because it will melt with this heat. But I put in 2 tablespoons, but I do 1 at a time. And then I have like a little stir, and I just gently stir that wax into the oil until the wax melts. And then I add another cup of that wax. So, and you want to be careful. Like for me right now, I'm noticing I put too much water in my little pot here. So I don't want that water to bubble into my oil. Otherwise it's going to get water in my oil, and that's not going to like solidify right. So I want to be really careful about that. I might just dump a little bit of it out. And that water's still warming too. Oh, that oil. Okay.
I think the pellets are easier to use than the bar. I don't know if you've seen the bar. It's like a brick of beeswax, and that's really hard to manipulate, cut, and it takes longer than the pellets.
And it's hard to measure, I would imagine, too. I did some salves with the shea butter, but for me, or cocoa butter, but for me personally, it was too like cremoso, too creamy, I forgot to mention this too with like, as a kid, I don't know if you all have this, but in the Mexican family that I grew up in, anytime you got sick, you always got to rub down with the Vicks Vaporub. Yeah. Everything was like this, like, and it was like traumatic Vicks Vaporub. No, I don't want it, But you could make your natural Vicks Vaporub. A workshop for another day, right? So that initial tablespoon of wax that I put in has dissolved into the oil. So now I'm going to add the second tablespoon. And for you personally, if you want your salve a little bit thicker, you can add more wax. If you don't want it as thick, then you can add a little bit less. And then I put it in these tin containers. You can order them online. They're less expensive if you buy them in bulk. But for me personally, I was like, I only need a couple, and then a couple more, and then a couple more, and a couple more. I bought them at the 99-cent store for $1. But really, at this point, I should have probably just bought like the whole like pack on Amazon for however much that was. So I have them here prepared. The lid is off already. so that once my oil is ready, then I can put it inside my little tin containers.
Yeah.
And I find that half a cup of oil with the 2 tablespoons of beeswax tends to give me about 4 little containers worth.
Also, the amount of beeswax that you use can depend on where you live. Maybe if I use 2 tablespoons of beeswax here in Montana, it would be harder. And then in Phoenix, because of the temperature, it might not be as hard. And a good thing that you can use before you pour those, you can get a spoon and you can pour a little bit of that sap onto the back of the spoon, and then you can put it in the freezer, and then give it a minute or so, and you take it out, and you can feel if it's thick enough, or if you want to add more. That allows you to kind of experiment before you pour it. And I also like that she's using the tin. You can use tin or glass containers. Some people use plastic. Make sure that if you use plastic, go for the safer plastics, because you're pouring something that's hot. And when you pour something hot into plastic, it can leach, chemicals. So the safer plastics would be number one. At the bottom of a plastic container, for example, you always have like a little triangle with a number in the middle. So opt for number 1, 2, 4, or 5. The numbers 7, 3, and 6 are the harmful ones, which will leach stuff into your food or whatever medicine you're making.
Thank you for sharing that, Gabi. So it's all constituted together here. It's like, it looks like, I don't want to like spill it onto here, but it looks like the oil did initially. I don't see the little pellets anymore. And then the other thing I learned the hard way is I clean the bottom of whatever little pot I've worked in, because I don't want that water spilling into my tin containers. And then I just pour a little bit of oil into each one, so that there's an even amount in each little container. I'm pretty generous too with the amount of oil I put in there. Sometimes, like in this case, I put more in others than in one. So anyway, and then I saw this the other day on Instagram, which is what inspired me to make this little like salve today. They like garnished it with a little bit of lavender on the top. So I'm gonna do that for this one right here. And let's see if it doesn't sink to the bottom. If it sinks to the bottom, then I should probably wait a little bit longer to solidifies more, but it looks like it's okay. So a little garnish there just for some aesthetic beauty.
I like that.
That's it, folks. This is like, this lavender, lavender's amazing, right? That is the process. So I'm gonna leave that. Here, let me show you. I'm gonna leave that like this for, I don't wanna spill it. I'm gonna leave it like this for 24 hours uncovered. And then once it all cools, then I'll put the little lids on there, and then I label everything, so I don't forget, because then all the little tins look the same too.
Also, if you wanted to add a little bit of vitamin E as your preservative, you would do that before pouring those onto the tins.
Thank you. I totally forgot that. So at this point, can I still add it?
Because it's still liquidy, I don't think there would be any problem.
Oh shoot. Yeah, see, so I forgot that. When I'm at home doing it by myself, I don't forget these things because I'm very focused, on it all. But yeah, the vitamin E is so important, right? So I'm just gonna mix that in so it gets in everywhere. Thank you for sharing that. This is why we did it together.
Yes, I got you.
Thank you, Gabi. Okay, questions. What questions do people have? We have a few more minutes till the workshop ends. So if not, if you think of something after the fact, Anjali, you can post the PowerPoint. We have our contact information that's on the PowerPoint. So feel free to reach out to us on Instagram. You can also email me. I'm on Facebook, but I don't really check that often. Instagram is the best way to get a hold of me. Direct message me. So I hope it's okay. I hope you enjoyed what we had to share with you today. I hope that you share it with others as well, that you walk away with something useful that helps you through postpartum, or maybe a friend through postpartum as well. And I'm just, super thankful for Gabi, for like being willing to do this with me, for Anjali, for hosting, for Siwa Patli Collective and all their partners who help make these sort of workshops possible and accessible and free to the community. I'm all about that. I think it's really important that that we support each other in this way, and that we're able to share this knowledge with one another to help us through, those moments in our life that can be challenging. And the pomadas, I think it's good for postpartum, but also, just in general, right? It's a really wonderful thing. So
Yeah,
I
even
hope
for the
to see you guys around.
yes, thank you so much for inviting me. I loved it. I also think that it's so versatile what you can make in your pomadas. You can use it for the kiddos, even for the babies. If it's safe for like a pregnant mom or a breastfeeding mom or postpartum, it's also safe for baby. And usually babies tend to get that eczema after birth. Some of them, this would be like an awesome thing. And it's also a great gift. I don't know, there's a thing about homemade food and homemade medicine making. When you give that to someone, there's just, I don't know, it's like a little piece of heart. And I think I like that better than like a store-bought gift. So thank you for inviting me, and I hope that you all enjoy this. If you have any more questions, let us know, and feel free to contact us.
Anjali, do you want to post that PowerPoint slide so that people can see it? Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to interrupt here. I'm actually assisting Anjali. I'm part of the collective. Good morning, good afternoon. She's having some issues with her computer. So she asked if I can help. So I am going to go ahead and share screen here. So that way we can share that last slide. I don't think, let me see. Yeah, I don't think we have any questions. Does anyone have any questions while I bring up this slide?
So I'm at Sharah Nieto in Instagram, and then my email is sharahmnieto@gmail.com. Yvonne, the recipe, if you all want to, if anybody wants it, I'm happy to share that as well. You guys have that in a Word document, so if you want it in writing. So thank you again.
Thank you. And then can you all see the screen here? The time, okay, I don't know how to make it like all the way big. Let's see here. And I don't know if you all have any closing or if that was your last word. I don't know if folks want to maybe share one thing that they learned today or something in the chat about what they'll be carrying with them. My dogs are everywhere. What they'll be carrying with them, into the day. And then we can go ahead and close or stay if folks have questions, whatever y'all are comfortable with.
I love that. Let's hear from. We'd love to hear from you if you can share before you leave. Sorry.
I just wanted to take a minute to thank y'all for putting this together. I'm rediscovering ways to make connection with the land and to do so in meaningful ways and to build community. And so these workshops, I feel, are so empowering, and they remind me that, regardless of our struggles, like, we have a connection to the earth and a duty to the gift that we have living this life to take these medicines and to use them how they were intended to be used. And this is a new path for me, and I appreciate the space and the ability to learn from everyone in the call. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Monique. And I'm sure there's others that share your sentiment. So wherever you're at in your process, build that relationship. Thank you for sharing. And Jacqueline, go get some more jars. Yes.
Hi, this is Krista. I just want to say thank you. I learned a lot. I've been really interested in making salves and with herbs and just kind of getting the hang of it. So I love how you brought that in of the knowledge, but also like how to make it, because that's how I am. I have to see somebody do it. It just sticks better for me. And I see like just how comfortable you are, how like easy it is. So it gives me more confidence to be like, yes, you can do this. Look how simple she made it. And I feel like when people have done it in the past, it was a lot of stuff that I didn't understand, but it's like repetitive for me to be like, oh yeah, okay, I remember somebody saying that, and then kind of connecting and everybody bringing their knowledge and sharing it in the circle. I feel like it's really nice to see that and feel that, because it helps me start my own practice of like, okay, when I'm talking to plants, how do I interact? Oh, I can like burn some sage and have that better interaction. So thank you for that and sharing your personal way of connecting with plants, because that helps me kind of guide me like, how do I want to connect with plants in making herbs and salves. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Krista. It's a process, right? And we're all at a different point in that process. But yeah, it's not something that I think like with salves, it's like so exclusive. It's in the boutique. It costs so much money, or, you know, somebody's selling it online. And no, these are things that people have been doing in homes for a very long time. And to get back to those practices, I love it, you know? So the more we can do that, I think the healthier we'll be and our communities will be. So I appreciate those of you who shared. And of course, our interpreter, thank you so much for doing such a wonderful job interpreting for us and making this more accessible to more people.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I love your shirt, by the way. And I just realized, like, when I turned my camera on, I did not plan this because I was not planning on being on screen, but my shirt says plants are friends. My sister-in-law gave it to me for my birthday, or Mother's Day, actually. And I just want to come on and say thank you so much. Oh my goodness, I feel like if we were all in like a space, we would totally just like connect and nerd out, geek out on like all the things. I am so excited to hear, you know, this work being done, and thank you for being here and sharing it with us and making it accessible, you know, for everyone. And talking about, you know, price, because that's a lot of things that, you know, the cost of things, we think that we can't have it, you know, and we deserve these medicines, you know, these are our medicines. And so just thank you. And thank you for sharing, you know, how your daughter likes to participate in it, because that's how it gets passed on. And we, you know, we continue on these teachings. So I just want to say thank you to everyone who attended. I don't know if anyone has anything else to say, but I am so excited to carry this energy on for the rest of my day and my weekend. Thank you so much.
Me too. Thank you, Yvonne. And I'm sure we'll see each other at some point. I hope so, at least. Will the PowerPoint be shared? That's a good question. Yes.
Cool. Okay. So we can go ahead and Angelique, can you give me a thumbs up or something? I want to make sure I get all the information for folks that want the PowerPoint, because I don't know how. Okay. Cool. Got it. So as long as it's registered, we have your email and we can send it out. Cool. Thank you. Any other questions?
Bueno, pues con eso, gracias, Dios Boutique. Have a beautiful day, everybody. And hopefully we'll see you at the next workshop.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Bye. Have a good day.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Are you able? Hi, Christy. Are you able to? Okay, cool. You might have. That's so crazy. Oh my gosh. How like stressful. Like, I think, Christy, we usually just like.
Do you want to pause the recording though? Because I think it's still recording.
Oh, you can't do it? Okay, I think she's having to like dual. Let me see. I could stop recording. Let me see. Can I stop recording? Since I'm not recording.
Can
Okay.
you all hear me now? It should have made someone else co-host.